moving. It brings up a lot of emotions: excitement and adventure, apprehension and anxiety, enthusiasm for what you gain, sadness for what you lose, uncertainty of what the future will be like. Just a lot of mix of emotions happen when we move. Do you remember that? Do you remember the feeling when you first moved away from home? For some, it might have been, oh, good riddance, get me out of here. For others, it was, oh, not yet, I don't feel ready. I think I was somewhere in between. I was 26 when I first came to Alberta. I thought I was being flown in for an interview and didn't realize I was preaching for the call. I came in from Toronto and I knew nothing about Edmonton. I had only heard bad things about Alberta. And here I was, suddenly standing in the middle of Stony Plain, no one else in sight, debating the pros and cons of moving with my partner at the time, when a tumbleweed blew across the empty street. The first time I've ever seen a tumbleweed. Half of me screamed, no, you can't do this move. And yet there was another part within me that said, go. Leave your country, your family, and your father's home for a land I will show you. Go. Pick up your things and move. You've heard that voice, I'm sure. Those of us who have moved to new homes had a moment when all the debates we had, the pros and con lists we made, the decisions and issues we were weighing, crystallized in an answer. Go. Some of you left your country or your province, or just found a new neighborhood, and there found yourself standing in unfamiliar ground, as tossed about as a tumbleweed, wondering if you could reroute yourself someplace new. If you can remember those feelings, then you'll know how Abraham feels in today's reading. Actually, he's not called Abraham yet. At this stage of his faith journey, he's Abram. Abram was living in Haran when he heard the voice of God say, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. That would have been super exciting. What a promise. He's asked to move across the country for the best job offer you could imagine. Sure, no problem. That part was thrilling. But then you pack your things. You say your farewells, you get started on the road, and reality sinks in. Abraham would have had all the same questions and doubts and uncertainties that we have. Will this really work? Where am I going? Have I made the right choice? For Abraham, the doubts would have got even louder as a severe famine hits the land. He's moved with his family away from a secure job and is now in a foreign land when the economy crashes. He can't provide for his wife or nephew, and they have no choice but to go to Egypt. One of the most common experiences for newcomers to Canada is doubt and regret. I guarantee it happens, and it usually hits around January to March. Oh, those months are hard. You arrive in Alberta full of enthusiasm. The sunshine is lovely, the people are friendly, but then it's not as easy to find a job as you were led to believe. You hit roadblocks from companies that require Canadian experience. Rent and food are pricier than you expected, and you haven't bought a winter coat yet. The first winter is always a time when you wonder, what have I done? When those moments come, it's not just a question of self-doubt, it's a spiritual question. For believers, we make this life choice in consultation with the Holy Spirit. We are asking for God's guidance. We want to follow God's path. We are stepping out in faith, like Abraham stepped out from Haran. We were being as faithful as we can, and when it doesn't work out, we are doubting not just ourselves, but God. Did we really hear God correctly? Did God misdirect us? How could God be putting me here? I had that moment during my first winter in Alberta. I moved here in December and I bought an old car from the previous minister's son. It was a Standard and I didn't know how to drive a Standard. The previous minister was kind enough to give me some lessons, but I kept stalling at every intersection. I told myself that honking was just the way Albertans said welcome. But then there was a day that winter when I was driving to First Presbyterian. Now there's a big hill leading up to First on 105 Street, and I didn't have a lot of practice with hills. As I am driving up that hill, I'm baffled as the car gets slower and slower. I hit the gas harder, but nothing happens. The car comes to a stop and then, to my horror, starts rolling backwards. I didn't know that was possible. Thank God everyone had already driven around me as I rolled the wrong way down that one-way street, utterly embarrassed. I don't think I cried, but I'm sure I wanted to. And I wondered, oh God, what have I done? Why am I here? Is this really what you wanted? We step out in faith, excited by the call, but that's only half of faith. It is your faith only starting to emerge. Yeah, it takes faith to hear God's voice and to say yes to God's call. Wonderful faith. But that's not all the faith that you're going to need. The real test of our faith, the moment faith becomes real, happens after you've made the move, after you've packed up your things, after you've accepted God's promise and ventured out to that foreign land. That's when your faith really starts. When things don't work out in that new land, when the land that was promised to be milk and honey suffers a famine, that's when the rubber hits the road and your faith is truly tested. Abraham failed that test, by the way. Yes, the father of faith wasn't perfect, and he made mistakes in his faith journey. Because of the famine, they moved to Egypt. Now, that wasn't a problem in itself. The problem was that Abraham's wife Sarai was very beautiful, too beautiful. Abraham worried that the Pharaoh would kill him to get access to Sarai, so he told Sarai to lie. They didn't tell anyone that they were married, instead told a half-truth that they were siblings. The Pharaoh did take Sarai to be his wife, but then God brought diseases on Pharaoh's household until Sarai was returned. Abraham got scared. He didn't trust that God was with them. He didn't trust that God would provide. He probably felt like he made a mistake, like he was all alone to deal with these problems. So he took matters into his own hands the same way that they would later do when trying to conceive a child. Oh, it's hard to have faith. Hard to trust that God is always there, especially when things don't work out the way we expect it. I think the reminder here for us is that when we move, when we respond to God's call with that, yes, let's go, we will be full of excitement and optimism. However, be prepared that the journey is just starting. When winter comes, when the famine hits and life gets hard, we will doubt the promise. We will wonder if we heard God right or if God really is with us. Abraham did, and I don't think my faith is any stronger than his. But don't give up. Hang in there and keep journeying. It is when we pass through those difficult times, when we persist despite doubts, when we find ourselves rolling backwards, that we discover God's providence protecting us. You will make it through those moments, and you will emerge with an even deeper, stronger faith. This week I'm in Ontario, at my parents' home, writing this sermon in the very same room that I wrote my very first sermon 20 years ago. As such, I've been reflecting on the move that took me to Alberta. I told myself at the time that, I'll only be in Alberta for 5 years, that I'll explore different provinces and eventually make my way back to Ontario. 5 years went by, and then another and another. 20 years in Alberta, and I've just decided that I want to spend at least another decade here. In fact, I begged God that I could stay in Alberta. This has been a journey filled with doubt and uncertainty. But as I passed through every winter, I felt God's promise more and more. A promise to be with me, to guide me, to help me navigate the road. I feel that promise become true, more true each year. The self-doubt doesn't get any less. I'll probably always feel some regret when it snows in April. but I am more certain that God will see me through it all, that God walks with me no matter where I have wandered. Plus, as scary and as challenging as moving might be, I know we don't do it alone. We go with God, and we also go with God's church in every place to support us. At St. Andrew's, whenever someone needs to move, one of the elders will pipe up with, "Time to call the Trans-Canaan van lines." It started with a sermon that one of the church members, Linda, once gave about today's reading. She said how hard it would have been for Abraham to move, especially because there was no Trans-Canaan van line that he could simply call to do the move for him. Others liked that line so much that it stuck. They joke about the Trans-Canaan van line until the moment when someone actually needed to move and they thought, hey, we can be that Trans-Canaan van line. So they got a couple people with trucks, a few more people with backs that could still lift things, and Trans-Canaan van lines was born. Abraham would have been so envious. In that way, we have a slight advantage over our father of faith. We've learned from his example, and we know that faith is not just saying yes. It is trusting that God will really follow through. And when the move gets difficult, we don't have to do it all ourselves. We as a church can lean on each other and be the moving company that Abraham would have wished for. God never promised Abraham that the road would be easy, that there would be no famines or no wrong turns. God promised something else, that I will be with you, I will bless you, I will make you a blessing. God kept that promise. Even when Abraham was afraid, even when he made some terrible mistakes, God did not abandon him. God journeyed with him every step of the way. So remember this, the next time you are called on to move. In the excitement and anxiety of it all, remember how your journey began, how far God has traveled with you, and remember that wherever you move to, this family of God is always right beside you. Amen.